Hey, Eric, I was wondering if you could help me out with a little project that I have going on.
I don't work with other people. What am I going to gain from that? Just let me do my own thing. I'll get it done exactly how I want to. There's no point. I appreciate it though.
I think you have the idea of collaboration all wrong. So I brought in Stevie Mathews today to discuss the importance of collaboration and how to have that growth mindset on this Principal Choice podcast.
Find your purpose, find your people, find your place.
Welcome back to the Principal Choice podcast. We have Stevie Mathews here today joining us to discuss collaboration, a growth mindset, and how that can really strengthen those relationships you have at work. Welcome to the Principal Choice podcast. I am so happy that you are joining us here today, Stevie, while we talk about the importance of collaboration and what that really means and what that kind of looks like in a different variety through work and personal life. When you start a project, what are the first things that you look for when you're looking for someone to collaborate on those projects?
So first of all, thank you for having me. Secondly, for your question, the main things are people who have humility and aren't like super married to a certain outcome. So I like to talk a lot about growth mindset in anything because if you have a fixed mindset, you're more likely to kind of not be open-minded. So whenever you have someone who with a more growth mindset, you have that option of, okay, well, this didn't work out how we thought it would, so we're going to steer this way now away from what we originally thought, or we made this big discovery of this is not going to work out anything like we planned. So someone who has that just openness, open-mindedness, humility, they don't have an ego, anything like that. That's the main things that I kind of look for.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, like, we're dealing with humans at the end of the day too. So there's going to be, everyone has, I feel like, their point where they have that fixed mindset. I know even like when we were creating this and getting it going, I had some of those fixed things where I was like, no, it has to be like this. And then you start to realize like, no, like
just
yeah, like the old Midwest it maybe shouldn't be that way because you didn't think about everything or you didn't have the full experience getting into it. When we are talking about these collaborations though, when we're growing, what are some of the biggest benefits that you've seen either from or in yourself or with others that you've worked with when you've worked through collaborations with them?
Something that I'll say and something I learned a lot just through being charitable with my time. So doing those things outside of your job description that, some people get stuck in the mindset of that's not my job and they don't want to do something different. So they clock in and they clock out and that's it. But something I did personally was volunteered my time a lot. So I would go to different councils that we have or, different the Link series, the book club that we have, or ELP. So different things like that I participated in. And I mean, that was all voluntary, not inside my job description, but it also, I feel like, really led me to where I'm at now and set me up for success and gave me a lot of those skills for leadership and working with others. So I think just taking opportunities as you see them and keeping that same open mind of, okay, this isn't in my job, but I'm going to do this because it's going to help someone else or it's going to help me in some way. And as long as we're adding value, I think that's the best thing we can do.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love the way you phrase that too, with being charitable with your time, because I think it's very easy to do where we think I'm at work, I just need to do the work and do this. And then my other time is personal time. But it's really more than that. There's little things that you can do to help out, and those do build those relationships and I think strengthen those bonds. What are some examples that you've kind of seen of someone stepping out and kind of being a little bit more charitable with their time and those kind of projects and how they've succeeded with that?
Yeah, I think some of the best project owners that I've come across are very charitable. They're quick to jump in and help people. And these projects are outside their job description. It's a special task that they're doing. And so there's not a clear defined role there. So it's kind of like you get in where you fit in kind of thing. So I think as long as they're being very intentional about their time and helping people where they can, I think that's where they're going to see the biggest difference.
That makes sense. One thing you said in the last answer, the last topic that we talked about, was adding that value to when you're being charitable with your time and doing these extra things. I think one thing that I've seen, I don't want to say a lot of, but some of, when I'll have a conversation or I'll hear a conversation's been had with somebody of like, you need to be more involved. You need to, jump into this council or jump into this and jump into that. And they do it and they don't get a lot out of it. And it's really because they didn't have a good why going into it. They said, oh, I joined this so I could get promoted. Or, oh, I took on this extra project so it would look better on a resume.
Right.
They're not actually looking at these things in a positive manner. It's just like a checkbox. So that's one thing I have always tried to challenge myself with. Don't just say yes to something because it's another thing to check off. And that can bring a lot of drawbacks. What have you seen as drawbacks for people that have done it in that way, that have said, I'm just doing it to check off a box and get promoted?
I think intentionality matters so much. And even just in interactions outside of that, if people can read your intentions. So if you're doing something for the sole purpose of, oh, this might get me more money, or, that's not, you're losing the purpose of that investment at that point. So if you're investing in something to grow yourself personally, you may not get money out of that, but it may create an opportunity in the long run where you're in front of people and you happen to be promoted because you are more familiar with people, or you have an opportunity because they're familiar with you at that point. So it's really just about, it comes down to creating relationships with people and creating sustainable relationships. And you can't do that on a surface level. So if you don't have the right intentions behind something, then it's going to be very, very surface level. And you're not going to get the value out of it that you think you will.
100%.
100%. Yeah. That kind of brings me back to when you were talking about humility and really needing to be humble in those situations, because it's very easy to let your ego drive, because your drive and your motivation is you. So it's easy to kind of wrap yourself up in that lovely little ego bubble and forget the humility side of that and breaking those down. For those who are having kind of those issues where it's that push-pull, what are some tips that you would like to kind of share that might help them break that down a little bit and kind of realize what those intentions are and be purposeful with those, like that movement where they're wanting to go?
Right. So for me personally, I'm a perfectionist at heart, and I call myself a recovering perfectionist because nobody's perfect. And that's a really hard realization for someone. I'm also an Enneagram 1, if you guys know anything about it. 1.
Same.
Very perfectionistic. We want things done a certain way. So it's hard for me to kind of give control up sometimes. So something I've practiced is giving people tasks and giving them room to grow. And, something that Cornella even said one time was, we interview for our next job every day. So if you're being charitable and you're providing value and you're creating opportunities for people, then you're not only setting them up for success, you're helping yourself because you're creating a situation where they're feeling comfortable to grow and, allowed to grow. And I think if people around us are growing, then we're also growing because we are who we surround ourselves with.
100%.
So,
yeah, no, that definitely hits home. One thing that you touched on there with the perfectionist in you. I know I deal with that as well. I feel like you probably deal with that as well, Milena, from things that we've talked about. And that is, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to give up. It's really a battle every day, especially when it comes to something that you are married to. And you even mentioned it more towards the beginning, where you can't get too married onto something. You can't get too attached to it, because as life is, things are going to evolve. Things are going to grow. Things are going to change. And if you're making it be as perfect as possible, it's not going to be. So you have to be okay with that. What are some steps or tricks or tips that you've given people that you've seen fall into that perfectionist area and they just can't let go of something? What have you done to try to like help bring them forward, help them grow more, push them?
Something that I saw in Amy's office one time, and her son wrote this, but she left it because she loved it. It says, progress over perfection. And I have to remember that in my day-to-day because I will get so stuck on something sometimes and I want it to be so perfect, but then I lose my progress because I have spent so much time trying to make sure it looks absolutely perfect, but then I've lost, the concept of what I'm doing. So I have to remember that myself, and that's something that I'll remind people of too. Like, this does not have to be perfect. We can change this as many times as we need to, but as long as we have the basic idea, and then also those little, just keeping morale high with people, especially in teams, celebrate every tiny little thing that they do. And like, just keep that morale high, I think is the best thing. So when something does come up that is detrimental or something different that we didn't expect, then we're not stuck on, oh man, this is so bad. This is, it's a catastrophe. We have to solve this now. We can step back for a moment and we can say, okay, let's look at this. All right, we have a game plan. We're good. We're rolling again. And I think as long as we're not getting super hung up on those small details, then we're going to keep that momentum. And as long as you have momentum, that's the biggest thing.
Love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think people forget that too, because we are in a time where we really strive for perfection in so many things. And it's around us socially, at work, personally, anything like that. So it is nice to remind yourself like, hey, we're all human. Everything is flawed. Nothing in this universe is perfect. Nothing at all. And it's okay to give yourself some grace, because then you can allow progress to happen, because progress is what just change. And change is always good, because you're always wanting to change and evolve and grow with that, for sure. And I think you really hit a great point too, by empowering others. It really makes them want to step out of their box. It makes them want to collab, and it allows them to feel like they have a little bit more of that motivation of, hey, I'm important. They're talking to me. They understand where I'm coming from. How can we now work together? I want to be a part of this project. I'm more open to it. I think the hardest part is for those people who are a little timid. So we've talked about the extroverts, kind of, where they're like, yeah, I'm here. It's my idea. We got this.
Right.
Boom, boom, boom. Like, it's like, whoa, calm down. But what about those shy, kind of introverted people who are just a little bit more like, just please, I want to work on something, but I have a hard time interacting with a lot of people. How can I still collaborate whilst maintaining their own peace, I should say?
So outside of work, I'm working on my master's in social work, and I also lead grief support groups. And I have a client on this grief group, and she doesn't talk much. And so I told my other co-facilitator that I really wanted to bring her out of her shell, because I think she has a lot of value to add. And a lot of times those quiet people have so many good things to add. So I try to celebrate even the small things that they contribute, because I think it builds that confidence and it gets them comfortable. And as long as you're creating that open door environment for people to feel like they do have a voice and it is valued, I think those people tend to come out of their shell a little bit more in those environments. So just making sure that you're creating that welcoming, open kind of thing, that's the best thing that I've noticed. People are more willing to open up.
Yeah, kind of building that trust a little bit with each other, and kind of then building that trust amongst the group to allow them to feel like they can use their voice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Trust is a big thing, especially when it comes to collaboration, because if you're working on a project with somebody and you don't trust the other person, then that perfectionism is going to creep in, and you're going to be like, I'm not going to give you this. I'm not going to give you that. You're going to do this work, and then I'm going to double check it and triple check it and all of these things.
It's hard to give up that control if you don't trust someone.
100%. Yep.
But you can also earn trust by giving them small things.
Exactly.
Like low risk things that they can work on. So if you're doing that, that builds confidence not only in your relationship with them, but their trust in you. and your ability to let them kind of run with
sure.
something.
100%. Trying to think of something with collaboration here, but no. So one thing that I was kind of thinking about too, when we've talking about trust and collaboration, is we've talked a lot about the growth mindset of it. I do want us to kind of dive into a little bit of the negative side of things, not too deep, but I want to hear a little bit more about maybe an experience you've had that you learned a lot from because the collaboration did not go well. If you have an example you can share from us, or even if you have just some tips to navigate a situation like that.
I'd have to think about that one.
That's fair.
Fixed mindset. I mean, personally, as someone who is a perfectionist, we tend to have a more fixed mindset. So that is something I've had to be very intentional about, is I can't be married to what this looks like at the end. This may look totally different than what I had envisioned in my mind. And something that I think challenging yourself and your beliefs is a really good way to kind of break out of that fixed mindset. It took a lot of like research and, you know, finding out who I am and learning about how my brain thinks. And once I understood that, I'm like, okay, I tend to be a little more controlling in these areas because I feel like I can do it the certain way that it's in my brain. It would take more time to communicate what's in my brain to someone else than for me to just do it.
Yeah.
But then that robs someone else of an opportunity to show their interpretation of something, which could be totally different, but it could be so much better than you ever imagined it. And I feel like this happens a lot whenever we talk with Dan, because he's like this visionary guy. And so he's got this great vision, but he doesn't really know what the vision is. So he'll come to us and say, you know, I want to do this task. And we're like, okay, well, what does that look like to you? And he's like, I don't know yet. I'll know when I see it, you know, kind of thing. Like, I don't want to prescribe something to you. So that leaves a lot of room for people to kind of run with something.
Yeah.
And I know that kind of goes more along with growth mindset, but that's right. I tend to find myself on that side. But I mean, that's what I would say, is just making sure that you're not so stuck on something that you're missing an opportunity to grow in an area that you couldn't even have imagined.
Yeah. And you mentioned too, like robbing someone else of that opportunity. It robs an opportunity from yourself too, to work on those delegation skills, to work on those coaching, those mentoring skills. It's, you know, for the people that we all have egos. We'll just say it that way. We all have those things that we're like, well, we don't want to miss out on this. Tell yourself you're missing out on it if you're not giving it away to somebody else, if it's a smaller task that you can handle. So
something Brian and I had just talked about recently was he attended a leadership conference and they talked about the joy of missing out. And it completely reframed the negative side of, it's not FOMO, it's JOMO. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'll remember now, because yes, you didn't get this opportunity, or it just didn't go how you planned or thought it would, but that means something else is coming for you and there's a new opportunity coming. So if you always have that mindset of, this one wasn't for me, or, you know, then you know that something else is coming and there's always going to be something else.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And kind of thinking of it as, this is someone getting to have their experience. I'm going to be able to have my own experience. And even if I was there, my experience would have been different. So I maybe wouldn't have gotten the same out of that conference that I would if I went to, you know, a different conference, or had a different meeting, or went to, you know, a council meeting or anything of that nature. So it really is interesting to kind of go, hey, that was for them and their experience. They needed that. That was their experience they needed. Now this is your experience that you need, and kind of being able to navigate that and balance it. I think that's really important. I love that, the joy of missing out, because as a control freak myself, trust me, my husband gets very angry when we try and do crafts together, because I'm like, this is how my vision is. How dare you tell me otherwise? And it's those moments where you're like, no, you can calm down. Just take a deep breath. We're all trying to help. We're all wanting that, your vision, to come true. It's just how that happens may not be what you thought A, B, C would look like. It might be A, D, B, C, and it still actually works out better that way. So it's that fine line, that kind of balance there. I really love that. I really, really do.
I'll say too, whenever I like that you said that, because sometimes when you have this idea in your mind of how this should go, but then someone else comes and challenges that, you have to almost like battle with your mind a little bit. Like, am I so stuck on what this should look like? Is this really how it should go? Or is this an opportunity to try something different? And that's something that I've found a lot with myself with working with other people and collaborating. A lot of people have great ideas, and that's where you can learn as well. It's a learning opportunity regardless. So even just having an open conversation, and it may not turn out that you go a different route, but you've at least considered another idea and thought of it in a different way. I'm really big about thinking of things in different ways and trying to, I have a very analytical mind. So I tend to think about, okay, well, this could be done this way or this way or this way or this way. And I've got like 7 different ways of how something could go. And then someone's like, or we could do it this way. And it's like a shortcut. So it gives people that opportunity. And I think building opportunity and adding value is the best thing we can do.
100%.
That's one of the 4 pillars of what we're trying to do in the company as well. So
Absolutely.
Goes right along with those.
Absolutely. Because, someone's skill set could be better in a certain area than what my skill set could be. Like, I could be like, I don't know how to work this. Like, I've never touched Illustrator a day in my life. And someone's like, oh, this, I could do it in my sleep. Wonderful. We can collaborate and work on this to make something beautiful or make something impactful. And so I think that's a really great idea and a great way of putting that for sure.
And even those outside perspectives too, they can kind of re-jog your mind a little bit, because if you're so used to doing something a certain way, someone who's never seen it before can be like, wait a second, did you see it this way? And they're like, no, never taught that. Did not know that was a thing. And then there we go, new discovery. So it's always good to even ask for opinions from those that may not be as quote unquote knowledgeable. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think more eyes on a project also helps the success of it, because, I maybe it's just the artist in me, but I know when things need to go out for approval, lots of eyes need to look at it, because someone could miss something, a typo, an image that's not quite right, that doesn't fit, anything like that. And so having those reviews, that's a collaboration. And I think people forget that collaboration isn't always like a big giant project. Sometimes it's something simple. It's like, hey, I need an opinion. I'm collaborating with you to get this taken care of, so we're all on the same page.
Something too is I value feedback so much, especially I know a lot of people are like, give me feedback, but I think constructive criticism goes a long way. It's not always easy to hear that, you could improve in a certain area, but it is something that is so necessary to growth. And I think too, if we remember that sometimes being uncomfortable means you are growing, because it's new territory. It feels weird, and it's,
Yeah. If you're uncomfortable, that means you're growing and changing. And that's always a good thing.
I know we're coming up on time here, but I do have one last final thought. Something my brother told me about this book he was reading for work was one of the topics in there was buy back your time. And it was really interesting to me because he was talking about how delegating your time not only increases your work productivity, but it gives someone else that opportunity as well. But then it has another component to it, because it will free up your time to learn more. And so then you can still grow. So if you're not working on these little tasks that take, if you're working on a task that someone else can do, then you're kind of robbing them of that opportunity. But then you come back and they can do it,
Yeah.
You buy back your own time, because now that time can be spent doing something else. Not saying they aren't beneficial, but something that helps the growth a little bit more, rather than focusing on the perfect little fixed things. So.
Absolutely. I love that idea of buying back your time and going, hey, you can take care of this small task. I can get this going on this. So that way it's not a rush or you feel overwhelmed. It's a nice way of kind of getting that breathability in there as well. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Stevie. I really appreciated it. I enjoyed our conversation about collaboration and, having that growth mindset. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on.
So, Eric, what did you learn today?
Well, first off, I learned it's not good to close myself out and do everything on my own. There's some things that can be gained from that. Helping others succeed, while also in turn buying back my time and helping myself succeed as well. And also, JOMO over FOMO. JOMO.
Absolutely. JOMO for the win. I'm so glad that Stevie was able to help you out on this journey of collaboration. And be sure to check out the show notes below and join us next time on the Principal Choice Podcast.
Find your purpose, find your people, find your place.